This is where we figure out our basic idea. So let's start with a concept. What concept appeals to you? Well, one concept that appeals to me always, and it's kind of hard to do in D&D, but I'm going to try it this time, the most dangerous game scenario, where the players are being hunted. One of the best authors to do most dangerous game scenarios with social commentary was Robert L. Sheckley. And let's write down his name right now. This is important to do. Write down your sources. I know you thought you were done with high school and college. You are not. Write down your sources. Sheckley was an amazing writer. Very much of his time, so you have to take a lot of stuff with a grain of salt and cognitive dissonance. But he came up with wonderful scenarios. The most popular one of his, which became adapted by Stephen King, and King acknowledges this, was his game show concepts. When he was writing in the 50s and 60s, Sheckley was being exposed to the new game shows, many of which were crooked. There is an excellent movie called Quiz Show about this issue. And so he took it a step further. The one that he thought was most important was Robert L. Sheckley's Prize of Peril. It's one of his first, and he goes on to deal with other ones where assassins are hunting each other. And so I think that this is a good way to get players into a most dangerous game scenario. In the original short story, in the most dangerous game, there was no prize. You were hunted until you died. In the Prize of Peril and subsequent works by Sheckley and other authors, there is a reward for surviving. We always want to put in a reward into our scenarios, into our campaigns, so that there is the carrot of the reward and the stick of getting yourself killed. What sort of environment do I want? There's something very interesting, and I'll put a link to this, that happened in real life that was a Prize of Peril scenario. And it occurred at the headquarters of the Ottoman Empire. And what would happen, and that place was the Topkapi Palace, and I'm probably not... The Topkapi Palace was a huge, enormous facility. If a Grand Vizier, or any Vizier, was asked to meet with the Sultan, he knew that something was up. He'd be either rewarded or punished. He'd be given a cup of sherbet. Not kidding. Show up wondering if he's going to live or die, and he'd be given a cup of sherbet. If it was a pale colored sherbet, like lemon, vanilla, etc., he could breathe a sigh of relief. He was going to be rewarded that day. If it was a red cup of sherbet, he had to finish that red cup of sherbet. And then he would be escorted to the grounds and told he has to reach the city before the gardener could catch him. And what would happen if the gardener caught him? The man who is extremely familiar with the grounds of the palace would be that he would be executed. However, if the vizier was intelligent, he would have examined the grounds many times over his tenure, and he would have figured out the best way and safest way and most secure way to get from the palace to the city. And the city was Istanbul, which meant just the city, although often it was still called Constantinople. Now you're wondering why the gardener? Well, gardeners were the executioners and personal bodyguards of the Sultan. The gardeners did not necessarily like this job, but it was part of their job. And in the Ottoman Empire, in many cases, if you refused a job like that, you'd be dead, or at least exiled and or possibly mutilated. So, the gardener and the vizier would race. If the vizier made it all the way, not only did he get his freedom, his position would be elevated, usually to become a more powerful person ruling over part of the empire. This has happened on multiple occasions before this was shut down. There was at least one vizier who won twice. He did not try for a third time, but each time he was elevated. I don't know what he did to annoy the Sultan on the second time, or the first for that matter. So this is going to be our model, the Topkapi Palace race. And therein, I find that this might be a good name for this. So we'll call it the Topkapi Run. Now, I'm terrible with names, so if you can think of a better one, that's a great idea. So this lends itself to something else, which is this whole palace intrigue, etc. thing, and odd bureaucracy, Byzantine in nature. Well, for me, that brings to mind Franz Kafka. So maybe we can get a Franz Kafka-esque feeling to this, the oppressive, maze-like, and so on. One advantage to doing is literature and history as my baselines. There are multiple reasons. First off, it gives a hint of familiarity to the work, and that helps the players feel like they are more immersed. You can do this all yourself, but there's no reason to do it all yourself. Second, the advantage to doing history is there's so many resources that we can look up to understand how this worked. For example, we have examples. There's literally images of the grounds, okay, including maps. So you don't have to use those maps or images, but it'll help you figure out how things look and how things are arranged in a realistic manner. You might swap something out, you might put something somewhere else, but knowing what a version of what you're writing about already looked like and already functioned as, and who was involved and the sort of people that were involved, this gives you a step up. Again, you can discard all of this, but having a historic basis for your adventure means that it's grounded, it's realistic, and it makes more sense. Okay? People aren't going to be asking where the bathrooms are because you know where the bathrooms are because you have a plan that shows you where the bathrooms are, for example, so they can sneak in and out and so on. And that's important. Now there's an additional element to this that I use, is that this scenario will be played in my Sub Rosa setting, which I'm working on with a few other people, including my wife and my frequent collaborator, Elizabeth Kidder. And this setting takes place as a hidden history in our world. So if I so choose, I can use the literal Topkapi Palace and it would make perfect sense. In this case, it's going to be a recreation. It's going to be a recreation of the grounds, except there's going to be cameras and sensors and drones everywhere, okay? Because it takes place in 2024. So there's going to be scrying eyes. There's going to be computers running rituals that cause illusions to occur, and so on. Think, if you want, think of Arcade from the Marvel Comics, which is a wonderful character, although objectively really evil. But you can think of Arcade running this sort of thing, okay? Again, I'm not going to necessarily steal Arcade as a character. I don't want to do that. But I can steal the concept from Prize of Peril, as well as Arcade, and kind of merge them into this being a deadly game show. Now, do I want to put it somewhere where it's viewed off-site, or am I going to make this a grand guignol where everybody who's watching is on-site? That's a good question. So, again, we come up with these ideas, we keep on going. Okay? So, by the way, if you're playing in at Dragon Con, you might come across this. So, just don't tell anyone. Okay. Anyways, so that's enough for the first session. We can do another session shortly. My name has been Joseph Cadotte. This is Ill-Informed Opinions, and we're making a D&D one-shot adventure.